Hi, this is Orion Johnson. I'm Senior Editor at CRN. I'm joined today by Gary McConnell. He's CEO of VirtuIT Systems, a solution provider out of New York. Gary, we're here today to talk about AI, and what I'd really like to, I've been waiting to talk to you for a while about this, but one of the things that I'm excited to talk about is AI in the mid-market. And I don't think it gets enough attention. I think we hear a lot about AI in enterprise. Of course, everybody's talking about, how's the SMB responding? What are you seeing in the mid-market in terms of AI adoption? These are folks who can't really wait for ROI, 5-10 years down the road. How are you seeing this play out there?
Yeah, everybody's very focused right now. What you see on the enterprise side, right? I listen to Chuck Robbins, the CEO of Cisco, speak, and I tell this story to everybody. But he was talking about being in the Middle East and how they have these large LLMs and they're listening to oil tankers and they know when these rigs are going to break down faster than the technicians do. And okay, that's really cool. I can't imagine how much that costs. That doesn't help the mid market, right? So
Right.
so to answer your question, we're seeing it more so in a due diligence period, at least from our customer base. What are actual real use cases we can put together? And then when we have that dialogue of whether it's an AI bot or whether it's data digestion and insight development, content creation, it comes down to, okay, now that we have a use case, what does the data look like? Where does it need to go? Where is it segregated? Is it AI ready data? Ideally, yes, but you're going to see more and more of just a full data set. Doesn't necessarily need to be optimized for AI. The models become much smarter. And then from that point, what's the infrastructure that it sits on? So it's been critical to determine how do we do this in a cost effective manner. And I think what you're seeing with a lot of the larger OEMs now is that they're able to bring a very cost effective solution to a customer and tie an entire ecosystem of partners together to really bring a customer solution. So, for example, you'll have a Lenovo that might bring in NVIDIA for their GPUs. They'll bring in Red Hat, OpenShift, IBM Watson, right? Really just bringing in the top players in the space to put together a complete solution for customers so that they don't have to think, what does the infrastructure need to sit on? What's going to digest the data? How is it fully optimized? And how do we turn it into an actual use case? It's been fun to watch develop, but there's a lot of learning that's still happening on the job.
You mentioned the infrastructure part of this, and I'm glad you did, because a lot of the talk is around where AI has to live close to the data. You want AI to be as close to that repository, close to your IP as possible. Are you seeing this? And then of course that kind of graduates into a conversation about, well, is this going to mean cloud repatriation? What are you seeing in terms of folks, either pulling workloads back from the cloud, building work on-prem, building infrastructure on-prem? Are you seeing any of that play out?
So to your first point, bringing AI closer to the data. I think when AI first took the economy by storm, everybody was placing bets on who the winner is going to be. Is going to be OpenAI or Meta? And then I think over time, as the solution continues to mature, you're realizing that the most valuable AI use case or implementation method is with hyper localized to where your data sits. So, for example, if I'm on Salesforce, I probably have a Salesforce specific LLM that knows that all of that data better than anything else in the world, and there's nothing that's going to compete with it. So,
Yes.
really capturing it hyper localized depending on what the actual use case is and where you're utilizing the data, right? It's not going to just come and be this overarching one size fits all solution, at least not from what we're seeing. Um, Again, I think I talked about Lenovo earlier, but they're just top of mind. And Lenovo specifically has, I think if you look at their site, they're going to tell you they have an enterprise AI package. They're going to talk about their desktop AI package, and they're going to talk about a cloud AI package. So it's not a one or the other. It's really where your workload's sitting and how can we bring the AI to those workloads in the most effective manner.
Speaking of those kind of three delivery devices, or those different methods of delivery, where are you seeing folks find the ROI here? When it comes to AI.
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind are the agents, right? The agents. I heard somebody say recently that the cool thing about AI, specifically in the mid market, is that it's a search engine that can think. And it sounds I'm completely oversimplifying it here. There's engineers out there that build this stuff that are thinking this idiot. But the real use cases that customers care about, I think You're seeing uh, the agents come to mind first and foremost, just for data ingestion, and then implementing some automation elements to take really the tier one level of support, for example. At least in the MSP space, a tier one offering might answer tickets that are standard over the course of a business week,
Right.
hard drive capacity issues, or laptop or password resets. So really basic use cases like that. And then as you start to test out and see the power of data ingestion and automation, we start to look at um, what are the predictive insights that I can gather from it, and how can I make data driven decisions. I think the enterprise does a really good job of having a ton of data that they're ingesting, not from an AI perspective, but just to tell a story as to what's happening with the current organization and where it might be going in the future.
Yeah.
And you layer AI on top of that to help you think and really put pictures to what the data says. I think the sky's the limit.
Talking about that, in terms of using business operational um, compute to find insights or data to deliver insights. How are you finding the adoption of the AI PC? Is that something that you see that businesses are actually doing now?
Yeah, the AI PC. I mean, I guess I consider that part of AI at the edge now, right? Because what has to happen is, if I'm, I continue to tie it back to use cases, right? Because that's what customers really care about. Everything else is just noise. But if I'm editing video and I'm, at a remote office, I need to be able to have the processing power to do that locally. So that was infrastructure at the edge, right? How do I have enough processing power to edit video on my laptop? Okay, great. Now you add AI elements into the fold, and it takes a lot more freaking GPU than status quo. So you're certainly seeing it come to the edge a little bit more. In terms of compute resources in the mid market, it's starting to gain a lot more traction. But right now, I'd say it's pretty bare bones. You're able to run models on a standard infrastructure data set, and then what happens is, as the solution starts to mature and these organizations realize, look at all these things that I can do with artificial intelligence, they're going to require a lot more computing power. So it hasn't hit yet. We expect it to, as it relates to the mid-market space.
For organizations out there that need that need an AI strategy or that haven't really started yet, where do you tell them to start? Where should they start with the data prep? I mean, you see sort of the organizations come in and go, help us, please with our AI. So you see sort of the worst of the worst here. What are you telling folks to do first before they make that call?
Sure. Number one is just looking at the organization and understanding what their pain points are. And if we can understand pain points, we can understand where AI helps and where AI, frankly, just gets in the way. Right. So if we can first start with our use cases, that's first and foremost, and then we go into, okay, where does that data sit? Right. If I'm, if you're running production workloads in Azure environment that sits in Wyoming, that's going to be a different conversation than all of my data is on-prem in Orangeburg, New York, 10 minutes from my office, right? So where does the data sit? Is it AI-ready data? Is it structured versus unstructured, delineating between those two? And then what type of infrastructure is going to be needed to support it, right? So step one, use case. Step two is data. Step three is what's the actual infrastructure where AI is going to run? And then the software, the AI models and software that gets layered on top of the infrastructure. So step four, AI software model, and then last piece is just the actual implementation of it. So being able to help them start with a use case, go down into where the data is, where it's going to sit, which models we're going to use, and why certain models play better with other types of infrastructure, and then okay, let's actually put this thing in motion for you.
You're building out these incredible systems for folks. What are you excited about here in the next 6 months, next year? So what do you see kind of down the road that gets you excited about this current environment we're in?
I'm excited with how early we are. I think we have a pretty solid framework as to how we put these AI solutions together and bring them to the market, but it's still so early. We haven't really gotten to hit the ground running yet. So
Yeah.
there's a ton of use cases. I think if you talk to the mid market, this is speculation. This is based on conversations, not based on something I've read. But I'd say 80% when they're talking about AI are really just talking about agentic AI, which is agents and leveraging some scripts and automation. So we haven't even scratched the surface yet. AI is going to sit in your org chart. right? You're gonna have agents, agentic coordinators, and managers that sit under team leads to really help drive actions across an organization. And I think the more we see that start to happen, the more efficient organizations become. It's scary because the organizations that are not doing this will get left behind very quickly. But we're still so early, and I think that's what I'm excited about.
I think about AI agents in the org chart. It doesn't mean you have to bring in like another birthday present for you. You don't have to remember anybody else's birthday in the org chart or anything like that.
That's right. It will make us lazier if we let it. So it's important that we don't let it do too much of the work for us.